What is up? I'm Marcel and welcome back to The Modern Filmmaker. In this video, I'm covering the basics of 3D text in Davinci Resolve 17. So I've been making quite a few things in Fusion within Davinci Resolve in the last year, and it blows my mind the 3D capabilities of Fusion. And I've been dying to get into depth with you all about what Fusion can really do. But I figured it'd be best if we start at the beginning when it came to 3D compositing, 3D text, and 3D properties within Fusion. So let's go ahead and hop into Davinci Resolve 17 and get this started. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start off with a brand new project, clicking Untitled Projects in the Project Manager, and I'm gonna head over to the Edit page of Davinci Resolve. And there's a few different ways to get to Fusion compositions, and that's the first thing we'll need is a Fusion composition to work within. And if I go up here to the Effects library, and then down here to Effects, you'll see that it says Fusion Composition. Now, one way I can get to a Fusion composition or make a new Fusion composition is if I just drag this onto the edit timeline, and it'll give me a new timeline with our composition within the timeline. Now I can click on this and then go right into Fusion, and now we're technically inside of that Fusion composition. And this may help to know how Fusion works inside of Davinci Resolve. If you don't already know, it's almost like a program built into Davinci Resolve that runs parallel. So you can take things kind of out of the Edit tab and then down into Fusion, make all your effects, and then pump them back into this media out, and it'll come back into the Edit tab. So any changes we make here will be shown back in the Edit tab as long as they're connected to this media out node here. So this is one way to make a Fusion composition, not my favorite way, because if anything would happen to this timeline, or if you delete this timeline, delete, boom, now our timeline's gone, and so is our Fusion composition. What I've learned is kind of a great way to work with Fusion compositions is to right-click within the media pool on the top left, right-click and then New Fusion Composition. And there's a few things about this. Now this will give me the opportunity to go ahead and set a duration and name for my Fusion composition. So I'll go ahead and set a duration to 10 seconds instead of 5. And then in the clip name, I will name this Sky View Logo. And the frame rate's just fine at 23.976, and I'll hit create. And now our Fusion composition is actually in our media pool. I like having this standalone Fusion composition within the media pool because that way, if we wanna, let's say, make multiple variations of this one composition after we build it out, we already have it built out here in the media pool, and we can duplicate that and then open the duplicated version and make little changes. And then that way we still have our original right here in the media pool. And then this way we can actually drag this in to a timeline, or just right here from the media pool, I could right click and open in Fusion page. So here we are in Fusion with our dual screens, which is very helpful. And if you're new to Fusion, I'll try to take my time, but this might be a little advanced. This is simple 3D text, but it's not quite completely beginner Fusion tutorial, but I will try to explain everything as I go along. So as I said, everything will have to come through this media out, and the node workflow is really nice. I like it because this is almost like a tunnel. I have a ton of space here. I can scroll up and down to get around, or I can hold in on my mouse wheel and move around like this, or I can hold control and I can zoom in or out on my mouse wheel and see how much space we have. I kind of like this because I know in After Effects, when you're doing compositing, you end up with all of these tracks and just all these tiny little lines with different colors and different labels and just these tiny little tracks. And to me, that's not quite intuitive. It's almost like a big haystack of tracks. Whereas this, it kind of gives you a little bit more of a visual. You can have a certain node tree built out over here, and then one built out over here, and one built out over here, and they can all connect to kind of make something into the media out right here. If you end up with a big thing, and if you do end up with a big node tree, which we'll try to keep things, fairly simple today, but if you end up with a big node tree, you can simply like zoom out from where you are, like go over here, zoom back in, and you're kind of at that section, which I really like because you can kind of set different sections on this little, kind of tunnel here. Until you get to the media out. And it kind of feels organized to me. In my crazy brain, it all feels a little organized. So first we need to start off with a 3D text. And here you have all the main tools for Fusion. And on the right, we have our text. So if I just click on the text, it'll give me a 3D text node, the 3D text button. And now I can go over here and type in, let's say, sky view. And we're not seeing anything yet because this has not been assigned to any preview window. Now, right off the bat, our media out is assigned to the second window, but we're not seeing anything there yet because we have nothing piped into the media out. And so if I actually just drag this text here in and up to this first window, boom, now we see it, and we actually get to see it in 3D space. And this is one of my favorite views, and probably the primary view we'll be using today. We'll be using the rendered view as well, but it's just so helpful. You'll kind of see as we go along, it's super helpful to have this view because you can look around and really see where everything is. And this view is really quick on the computer. It doesn't take much computing power to just move around this. And what I'm doing here is I can hold down on the mouse wheel and just move around this 3D space, or I can hold Alt and I can rotate around kind of this center point wherever I clicked my mouse. And then I can use the mouse wheel, zoom up and down to go up and down, and I can hold Control to zoom in and out. So again, that's hold down on the mouse wheel to move around, and then hold Alt to rotate around. Up and down is just mouse wheel up and down, and then zoom is hold Control and mouse wheel up and down to zoom in and out. Pretty simple and pretty awesome. So from here, what do we need to do to connect this actually to our media out? Now to connect anything 3D to any media out, you'll need a render 3D. Every kind of 3D tree of nodes will need to go through a render 3D for it to actually render out. Because we're almost looking at two different worlds here. If I click on this and then I do go to our render 3D node, which is this last tool at the very end of this list in the middle, and then I can connect this. You can see that our text is going into the render 3D, and then I can take our output from the render 3D and put it into our media out, and now we have it in our media out. Now, again, I was saying this is like two different worlds because this is our 2D world over here on the right. Our media out is our 2D world that's going right back to the timeline. So if we had this in a timeline and we went back to the timeline, this is exactly what we would see, what's in this media out. And right now I have, in the settings, I have the checker underlay checked, but if I uncheck this, then this is what we're working with. You wouldn't actually see the checker overlay if you were to render this right now. You would just see this text, black background, nothing else. You can't move around this side. If I click on the mouse wheel, I'm just going to move the preview screen around. I'm not actually going to have any 3D controls. But on the left, where I have our text 3D, this is actually our 3D space and our 3D world where we can move around as if we are in this 3D world, if we were a camera, as if we were a camera in this 3D world, just kind of looking around and flying around. And so you kind of remember that these are two different things here, and you're working within this 3D space to create this final 2D image. Even if it's a 3D image, you know, in the end it's just 2D because it's a flat image. So from here, we have our text 3D, our render 3D, and our media out. One thing I'm going to do real fast is right click on this background and go up to Arrange Tools and then click to Grid. And this way, when I move around nodes or create new nodes, they will stick to this grid, allowing us for just a slight bit more organization. We'll need to start attaching things to this 3D space. But first of all, I'll have to change this font to our company font. And then from here, I'll have to change the extrusion to get this a little more 3D looking, because right now this is just flat. So I'm going to go down in our 3D text, 3D properties to extrusion. I'll collapse this. And then from here, I'll just start bumping this extrusion depth up to give us that blocky text. And that looks pretty good. And right now, you're not really seeing any lighting or shading because we don't have any lighting or shading. And that's exactly what we're about to get to right now. I love that it's still working really smooth in this kind of 3D preview window. I love that to death. Nothing like 3D space to me because it's just like, I could do anything in here. It's just a blank canvas. So from here, we'll have to add things to our text, and we'll use the merge 3D, similar to our 2D merge that I've used in how to make modern animated titles in Davinci Resolve 16, I believe it was. But the great thing about a merge 3D, if I lay that down, here's the button for the merge 3D. I'll click that and it'll add one right behind the text 3D. And the merge 3D can accept as many inputs as you want, which I love because You know how crazy things can get with the 2D side of Fusion, where you just have a ton of merges because a 2D merge can only hold 2 things, but the 3D merge can hold several things. So the first thing I'm going to do here is actually add another merge. Just to keep things organized, I'm going to hook all of our lights up to a separate merge 3D, and we'll put that up here just to kind of keep it out of the way of the text. And then I will go ahead and click on a light spotlight right here. And now you can see that it put our spotlight right in the middle of our composition. And all I've got to do is start bringing this back and kind of position it to where I want it. You can grab any of these arms to move the light, or in the inspector properties, you can go to transform and use these properties to move the light, the X, Y, and the Z. And one thing that's really helpful is this use target. Now, if I click use target, it'll place a target right there at the very middle of the composition, which is perfect because that's exactly where I want the light to shine on. I want it to shine on the text. So this way, if I move around the X position, it'll actually rotate around that point, which is really nice. I'm going to Control Z that just to make it go back to where it started. And I'm going to set my target. I'm going to move around these anchors here to set my target right around that Y. And that looks pretty good, maybe towards the front. And another thing we'll need to do is actually turn the lighting on. So if I jump over to the Render 3D, you can see that right under lighting, this is unchecked, and we can enable lighting just by clicking that right there. And we'll also need to come over here to the Merge 3D and click on Pass Through Lighting. That is the kind of the last tip you'll need. If we were plugged straight into the original Merge 3D, we will not need that. But if you're connected to a Merge 3D with your lights, you'll need to pass through the lighting through that merge down to the original merge. And now we can see our text kind of shining through there, just the middle, because that's all we have lit. And if I move the light around, you can see me kind of lighting. You can see that light rotating around the text. And it already looks pretty nice. I mean, people have been saying for a while that Fusion is not made for 3D work, but it's getting there. It's definitely getting there. As far as smoothness, things are working a lot smoother than I've seen them work in the past. I'm loving kind of the better 3D workflow in Davinci Resolve 17 so far. And then to give this light a little bit more feathering on the outside, I can come down here to this angle, right under the cone angle. I can move this up and it'll give me a little wider and a softer kind of fall off of lighting. And now I can move this back a little bit more, but overall I'm pretty happy with how this looks. I might move the target down a little bit just by moving this thing in the center, kind of checking out how the light reflects. And what I'm looking at is how the light's reflecting here and here. When I move this down, it kind of comes off the E and it kind of comes more on the bottom of the S. So I'm trying to just get a nice feel there. I kind of like it right there. It looks cool. Boom. And then from there, I will make another light. I kind of want to light this from several different directions. Almost get like a little 3-point lighting going on this text to give it that kind of cinematic pop. So with the Merge 3D selected, I'm going to click the light again, spotlight again, and I'll add another spotlight. And actually, as a matter of fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to delete that spotlight. And I'm actually going to copy this spotlight with Control C, and then I'll click the background and Control V, and I'll paste that and then connect that to the Merge 3D. That'll just be a little faster since we already have the target set, and some of the other settings were already set as well. So I'll go ahead and grab this, and I'll move this, let's say, over to the right. I'm going to move this on the exact opposite side. Kind of just working my way around. I don't want to make any super huge moves because you can see if I move this all the way around, it's trying to do what I'm telling it to, which is move in the X position, but it's also trying to keep my target. So it's moving away and turning towards, if I make little movements, then it'll turn as I move, and see it's kind of rotating around instead of making this big, you know, if I go like this, then it's going to come all the way off the screen. Whereas if I make small movements, it'll kind of just slowly rotate around that target that I have set for it. So I'll move this down. I'll come over here, keep coming over here. And I'll move the target of this one over this way. This was the old target. Put that where it was. And whoops, I'm going to move this target over to the V and up a little more. Because really what I'm trying to get is this side light. I'm trying to get some lighting within the side. A little reflective lighting there. To kind of give it more style. You see if I move this around. See how that light is kind of reflecting off the sides? That's exactly what I'm looking for. And then I'll move this down. So it's kind of shining up. That way I'm getting a little underglow from over here. Kind of cool. It's just about right. Here. Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Let's get it back a little bit, and I'll maybe even turn this light intensity down to 0.5, or maybe 0.65. And I'll also turn down our original light to, let's say, 0.5, just to take a look at that. And I'm going to grab this and slowly start working up to see what I'm really liking. It's nice, a little flat, but it's nice. Let's add one more light to kind of give us a little more depth and dimension. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that first light again with Control-C, and then click on the background, Control-V, and I'll link this light to the merge, and then I will push this around to the back. I'm going to use this X and slowly start pushing. Here, I'll actually undo, and give you guys a better angle here. So I'm going to slowly nudge this X-axis around to the back. Now you're seeing we're getting some reflection on this side, some extra reflection. If I move up and down, you see that? It's pretty sick. It's pretty nice. And I'm going to move this around the back a little bit more because I really want to get that metallic-y. See that reflective look there? Boom, there it is. That's what I'm going for. That like shimmer around the edges. I actually want this whole thing to give me that shimmer around the edges. So what I'm going to do is go to the beginning of the composition. I'm going to click on the transform of that light. I'm going to click on the X and the Z translation, because this will not be moving up and down. It should just move left to right and in Z space, front to back. So then I'll make a keyframe there, and then I'll go to, let's say I'll go all the way to 160, and I'm going to start working this around. Just like this, to give us that shimmer as it comes around. And then if I come back here and play this, see how the light reflections kind of moving around the edges, working its way down the word. It kind of starts over here at the U or on the Y. I love that. That is so sweet. It's the little things. It's just that little touch that I think is really, really, really cool. So another thing we're going to do is we're going to make a camera, and then we're going to play with some of these lights a little more. I just want to get to that before it's too late. So I'm going to click on our original merge down here and then click the camera button. And this will give us a camera, and we can't see anything again, because once you make a camera, it pretty much pipes that right into the Render 3D. So that's what we're seeing in our media out now. And the problem is it gave us a camera right in the middle of our composition. So if I zoom in here, you can see that we have a camera just sitting in the middle of our composition. So I'll need to go into our transform and go to the Z space and move our camera backwards so we can actually see. Let's just keep going. Let's go all the way back to like here. Nice. And so from there, let's go back to our lights. And we'll line up everything. Let's see here. A little organization. And we'll keyframe these other lights. So I'm going to start with this second light. I'm actually going to disconnect our second light and just work on this first light now that we know what the second light is doing, or the last light is doing from the back, our little rim light. So with this first light, I'm actually going to go to the target and I'm going to keyframe our target. So I'm going to go to the very beginning and I'm going to click on, we'll go with the Y axis of our target. And I'll go to about 160 and I'll make another keyframe in our Y axis of our target of that one light. Then I'll hit this little arrow to the left of the keyframe to go back to our first one. And I'm going to move the target down. So we start with this. Oh, that's clean. That's clean. I mean, it's kind of clean already. And you know what's awesome? If I were to disconnect this first light and just watch this animation play back, that is sweet. I mean, it's just a little thing sometimes. I mean, and that's pretty simple. It's pretty easy on my computer, probably pretty easy on yours too, depending on what you're working with. But I mean, most computers should have no problem with this 1:3 text and this beautiful reflective light in the background. And there's some other things you can do too. If you are experiencing some rough playback, you can right click where this kind of playhead is in this bar here, right click, and you can click off high quality and click off motion blur. Now, of course, you won't see as high quality of 3D models and you won't have motion blur if you're doing animations, but it'll, you know, kind of give you 2 steps less that your computer has to do to preview back what you're working with. So that's pretty sweet. So let's go back to our Spotlight 1 and see what that animation looks like if we play that back. That's pretty cool. I kind of like it, but I kind of don't. I want a little bit more movement. So I'm going to go to our last keyframe, our Y keyframe, where we keyframed our target. And I'm going to make a keyframe in our X axis as well. And then go back to our first keyframe, click back on this double menu or double preview window screen so I can see what I'm moving around. And then move our target to, I'll move it to the left. Maybe now when it comes in, not bad. Not bad. I can live with that. One thing I do want is a little bigger cone angle. I just stretch this cone angle out a little bit. Give me a little bigger of a cone angle. Kind of sweeping across there. Not bad. Not bad. So let's go to our second light that we had added. And we're going to keyframe this one as well. So let's go down to our 160 and keyframe. Let's keyframe the target. We're going to keyframe the X axis of the target. And then we'll go back to the beginning and we'll move that target over to the right. All the way over here. And then if we play this back, nice. Kind of cool. Kind of cool. Now we can make this a lot cooler because it does look a little stale, I will say. It looks a little stale. So let me take a look at our node tree here. And let's see. Yeah, one way we can make this instantly cooler is with some kind of depth of field or some kind of blur, because your camera does have depth of field settings if you know how to access them. So one thing we're gonna do first, though, I'm gonna come back to the Edit tab, and I'm actually going to copy this composition because I want to keep both of these for 2 different purposes. And I'm gonna go back into our first one, right-click the first one, open in Fusion page, and I'm gonna do one simple camera movement with this one. and I'm going to click on our camera, go to the transform, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Now I'm going to hit the keyframe at frame 1 on our Z position, and then I'm going to come out to, let's just say 120, and I'm going to move back slightly, just about right there. Then we can hit our playback, and we got a slow pullback as these lights come on. Very cool. Let me go down into our keyframes. Actually, let me go into our splines because we actually need to ease these splines. Now, all of the easing, all of our keyframes, you can see our keyframes here in the keyframe menu here. We've made all these keyframes in the spotlights and the camera movement. But if we go over here to the splines, we can actually click through our spotlights, and you'll see these keyframes pop up, spotlight and camera. And if you click this button here, it'll actually zoom out to show all of our keyframes. And all I want to do is come to our last keyframes and select all of these last ones and hit S. That way we'll get a slow easing out of those movements. So it'll go through those animations and it'll slowly come to a stop of each one. Nice. And then if we come back here, I'm going to delete that last composition we made since we didn't do the keyframe easing. And we'll come back here and copy by selecting, Control Copy, and then deselecting and Control V. And now we have our copy. We'll open this in Fusion. And then I'm going to go to our camera position. I'm going to scoot a little forward through our composition here, go to our camera, and I'm going to delete our keyframes in the Z position. So let me just get rid of those. And I'm going to go to just our singular view here. And then I will move in with the Z. And I will click Use Target. And let me check where that target is. If I just move this merge into the second node here, or this first preview screen. Our target for the camera, move this up a little bit, just to there. And I'm going to keep pushing in, then I'm going to rotate the Y. Yeah. Because I kind of want to focus on this V just for this shot. Move this up a little bit in the target and rotate it a little more. Yeah, that's cool. Maybe scoot this in a little more. And then I'm going to set a keyframe, the X position. At the beginning, I'm going to keyframe the X translation, and then I'll go down to 130, and I will bend it a little more backwards, just like that. And one thing you can do also to get smoother playback, which I've gone over in the Make Modern Titles video and several other videos, is up here in playback, you can come down to timeline proxy mode and go down to quarter. And this way you'll just have quarter resolution within your preview window. I'm going to go ahead and save this as tutorial. Now we should be able to scrub through this pretty easily. Yeah, that's kind of cool. All right, so what we're going to do to make this even cooler, because this is still, again, looks pretty stale, is I'm going to come down to the Render 3D, and then you'll see that under Reporting and Render Type, it says Software Render. Software Render is fantastic. It works great. But one thing that works even better is if you come down and go to the OpenGL render, and you'll see that it gave you a few more options with output channels anti-aliasing, and then accumulation effects. And accumulation effects is where you'll find the depth of field for the camera. And if I just click this button to enable accumulation effects, you'll automatically see that it all went out of whack. And the first thing I'm going to do is dial down the blur a little bit to 0.1, because 0.2 is a little insane. I might even go down to 0.08. That looks good. And then pretty much what's going on right now is we have the depth of field on. So it's like we're using a camera with like an f1.4, but it's completely out of focus. So we need to come back to the camera and we need to change our focus. And we need to do this with the focal plane. We can come to the focal plane and let's go down to let's try 1.2 and 1.3. Slowly getting closer here. Let's see if 5 gets us there. Yes, that's sick. And 5.5, what's that do for us? Let's do 1.45. 1.52. All right, I'm getting a little nitpicky here, but that's all right. And then you'll see now that it's like a whole different animation if we play this back. I don't know if it's going to give us anywhere near smooth playback, because the one thing about depth of field, it will enhance your image, but it will enhance how much power Davinci Resolve needs to even work. That is pretty cool. It's like just like a cool little reveal. And what we could do is slow down those lights. Those lights are going probably a little quicker than they need to. So if I come down here to the splines and I turn on our spotlight again, see all 3 spotlights, and then our zoom to fit, and I'll come down here and just drag. I'll select all of these keyframes and drag them all to like 225. This way, it's a little bit slower of an overall effect. Yeah. And then, of course, we can come back and set up kind of one more little scene. If we copy and then paste and right-click, open in Fusion Composition, and now we have our same composition. We can go ahead and move around our camera to a different position. Let's go ahead and move our merge into our preview screen. And then we'll grab our camera and go to transform. I'm going to get rid of the keyframes that we currently have in the transform. And I'm just going to move this around kind of freehand. Looking for a new cool position. Let's see. Yeah, this is pretty cool. And if we move maybe the target. Oh, yeah. And you know what I'd love to be able to zoom in right now? Oh, there we go. Ask and you shall receive, Marcel. So let me keyframe this right here, and then I'll go to around the 170 just to give myself some space. And I'm gonna kind of pull this back a tad. And another thing I'm gonna do is kind of dull down these lights a bit. They look a little crazy. They look a little wild. The lighting right now is a little much. That should be good. Now if we go ahead and preview this back, oh, this is insane. This actually looks crazy. I kind of want the camera to move a little bit more though. The camera's not moving quick enough for me, my friend. And I'll take this back to like, yeah. And let's take a look at that. And 3D is a game of patience. As you're noticing right now, you kind of have to, set things, let it cache and render out, and then go back and preview and take a good look at it. But, the more you work with it, the more you kind of get familiar with what you're looking at. Like right now, I can tell what I'm seeing is going to turn out pretty good. I can tell by the camera movement, even though it's kind of stuttery right now, I can tell I'm going to be happy with that speed. Now, if I play this back, yeah, that's pretty cool. And one thing I do not like is the blur looks a little cheap. So I'm going to come in here and bump that up to 64 and then bump this down to 0.06 or maybe even 0.04 because real cameras don't have that much blur. So now what you could do, what you technically could do is you come down here, drag in one composition. Maybe we'll start with logo copy 2 because it almost starts out pitch black. And we can fade this in with this nifty fade in here. So it fades in and then you get a second view. Bring in that second view, and then bring in that third view. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how you end up with something that looks like you're really in some kind of 3D environment, Now that's pretty sick, I've got to say, and as simple as it is, it really kind of shows the power of Fusion within Davinci Resolve. But if you guys like this video and want more videos on Fusion within Davinci Resolve, definitely give this video a like. And if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, leave them in the comment section down below. And of course, subscribe if you like videos on Davinci Resolve. With Davinci Resolve 17 out, I'm making plenty of new videos. And as always, guys, I'm Marcel. This has been The Modern Filmmaker. I'll see y'all next time. Peace!